I am an architect and a music lover. Architecture is my profession, and I'm lucky enough to enjoy a passion for it. While as a bedroom DJ and record collector, music is my hobby. In my life, there are many opportunities for the two to coexist. I design buildings with music on in the background. I walk around cities looking at buildings with headphones on. But I believe the relationship between architecture and music goes way beyond coexistence. For me, there is music in every building, and with a little imagination, we all have the potential to experience it. There are many parallels between architecture and music. Both have their specialist language, but it is striking how many of these terms are shared. If we look at a list of the elements of music, we can see that many of these terms are regularly used to describe architecture. Rhythm in architecture is visual and describes repeating patterns such as rows of columns or the arrangement of windows. Dynamic architecture involves changes and variations, a facade that steps in and out or up and down along its length, for example. A building can demonstrate harmony if there is similarity in the design of different building components, or different building materials sit well together. Building materials give buildings texture, and form primarily describes a building's shape. But the crucial shared term is composition, meaning the planned arrangement of parts to form a whole. Architectural composition is the arrangement of building components in space sensed with our eyes. Musical composition is the arrangement of sounds in time sensed with our ears. Architectural composition is given its distinctive character or quality through choice of materials, timber, glass, brick, and so on. And the musical equivalent is the choice or the range of instruments and sounds available to a composer. Strings, percussion, brass, and so on. Both compositions are dreamed up in the creator's head and put to paper as a set of instructions for others to execute. Architectural drawings instruct builders on how to construct a particular building, while a musical score instructs musicians on the performance of a particular piece. Picture the busy building site with all the builders holding drawings for their specialist trade, each working away on the different parts of the building to create the whole. Now picture the orchestra and all the musicians with their sheet music, each playing their part in combination to perform the overall piece of music. As we have seen, parallels can be drawn between architecture and music, but the fundamental difference is that one is visual, set in space, and one is oral, set in time. So can we translate the visual, physical, spatial components of architecture to the oral, intangible, time-based components of music? Can we look at a building and hear its sounds? The late 18th century German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said famously, "Architecture is frozen music." This suggests solidifying, giving physical presence to sounds. In his time, the predominant architectural style was Baroque, and Gothic architecture came before. The significant buildings from these eras were palaces, cathedrals, and churches. With their elaborate sculptural stone forms, both internally and externally, still today, they represent some of the most compelling examples of musical expression in built form. I don't know a lot about classical music, but loosely speaking, I am able to align its orchestration and melodies with ornament, craft, organic sculptural form. If we strip away these aspects from architecture, as the modern movement did in the early 20th century, and more recently high-tech, brutalism, and minimalism, I feel intuitively less able to align contemporary architecture and buildings with historic music. If we think of the classical buildings of the past in terms of the classical music of the past, what might be the appropriate music for today to draw parallels with contemporary architecture? Thinking of well-known buildings, we might say that the South Bank's Hayward Gallery, with its chaotic composition of concrete forms and its spiky pyramidal roof lights, would be punk. The Pompidou Centre in Paris, with its repetitive steel frame, exposed factory-like surfaces and pipework, and these futuristic tubular walkways and escalators, would be techno. And the Guggenheim in Bilbao, with its free-flowing forms that interweave or collide with one another, and its lack of standardized rhythm, must be a kind of improvised free jazz. Over the ages, the style of architecture and music has been influenced by external factors such as politics, war, fashion. What about today? We are in a technological revolution with computers at the heart of everything. The primary instrumental music is electronic. There are many forms: house, techno, dubstep, drum and bass. Even most pop music today is electronic. With the introduction of computers as a compositional tool over the last few decades, I think it is more apparent than ever that both contemporary architecture and music involve the organized, now computer-aided repetition of a series of components. Think of the repetitive facades of new office blocks, and then think of the repetitive beats of the latest electro-pop chart topper. We design buildings in a similar manner to the composition of music. The starting point can vary, but ultimately the finished piece consists of a series of components, the arrangement of components into a series of layers, held together by the overarching rhythm or structure. Both composer and architect must carefully consider the harmony between these layers, how they interact. Do they complement one another, or is there a conscious jarring for dramatic effect? Do they sit in line with the rhythm, or do they break the mold? Is it a consistent, repetitive flow, or are there accents, variations, changes that create moments of interest? So if both architecture and music are compositions with rhythm and harmony at their core, can we look upon a building and imagine its visual components as sounds, translating it to music? I think we can, but I wanted to put this to the test. This is the facade of a building for Jesus College in Cambridge that I helped to design. My brother is an electronic music producer, and we agreed to work together on a musical representation of this facade. It lends itself well to the test because there is a well-defined order and clear rhythm to the visual composition. We've considered each bay of the facade as a bar in the music. The primary structure in this building is set out as brick piers. These are repetitive and set at regular intervals, establishing the beat as the core framework for the rhythm of this facade. At the base of the building, the space between the brick piers is subdivided into 8. This introduces another layer of rhythm that we have translated to a drum pattern. Here my brother imagined walking past the building, running a stick along the stone fins as you go. On the next layer, the bays are split into 4, and we've added another layer of rhythm, a sequence of 4 piano chords that set the groove and reinforce the meter of the composition. On the floor above, the bays are split into 2, and here we introduce our first layer of melody, two elongated, undulating chords, giving a harmonic warmth to the piece. And the top floor, the bays are also split into two. Here the balconies are open to the sky, and so the sound is high-pitched and allowed to rise up. We opted for a vocal sample to represent this. So now the only thing missing are the foundations, and I think these are best represented in music through the bass. The foundations are set out to support the structure above in the same way that a bass line supports the rhythm in music. When we add all these elements together, we can hear the 8 bars of the music tracking across the 8 bays of the facade. Where the facade design is repetitive, the musical composition is repetitive, and where there is variation in the facade, there is variation in the music. With some simplification and minor tweaking, the color-coded architectural drawings and the readout from the music creation software begin to resemble one another. But these simplified two-dimensional representations fail to describe the nuances of the compositions that you would experience by visiting the building or listening to the music. The drawings miss the three-dimensional qualities of this facade, the depth, the recessed and protruding elements, the play of light and shadow. The coloured blocks in the music readout fail to visually describe the dynamics of the music, the modulated sounds, the EQ, the frequencies and filters. But these aspects are key to the drama of the compositions. We could have gone further in terms of translating architectural components to sounds. I think that different forms and different materials would elicit different sounds. For example, the brick columns in our facade that we saw earlier, to my mind, would sound very different to any of the columns in these images. But the composition for today was intended to be diagrammatic. The electronic score resembles the drawings, but what about the actual physical building? Electronic music is generally composed on computers, and it is these computers that perform the finished piece, creating the final recording. While the drawings are produced in the perfect world of computers, the physical finished building, in fact, involves human interpretation, errors, and imperfections. Essentially, a building built by hand is really a performance of the architectural design. Therefore, perhaps it would have been better translated to a live music performance. Think again of the similarities between the orchestra and the busy building site. So what role do you play in all of this? Well, with a little imagination, I believe you can all experience the music of architecture. Both are subjective. Each of you will have your own musical interpretations of any building. I'm sure the buildings that you find attractive will sound good in your head, and those you don't won't. Imagine walking down a street. As a passerby, we can catch a glimpse of the building and hear a snippet of its song. Or we can stand back, take in the full facade, unpick its structure, materials, layers, and hear the full symphony. Hopefully, this will enrich your experience of the built environment. And if an individual building can be translated to a song, perhaps a street is like an album, and a city, a full record collection. So next time you walk around a city or visit a building, take a moment to look at the architecture, read the facades, find the underlying rhythms, melodies, and harmony, and enjoy imagining each building's song play out in your head.